I'd like to invite Professor Majula O'Connor to join us again. And I'll start going through the questions in the order of voting. So the first one, I think this was came very soon after with your presentation started, so it will be directed to you, Professor. Reads, are there any specific resources that have been helpful when working with migrant refugee women to identify coercive control and support them in the therapeutic space?
Tools, is that what that means? They want to know specific tools?
Yes, resources, tools, materials, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that I'm trying to think if there are any clear resources. Unfortunately, you really do have to read bits and pieces and research in books, in the government papers to come and formulate your own ideas. But if you actually go on to the Australian government website, they have a website which is called the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, AIHW. They have a whole lot of tools and papers and research that is conducted in the Australian environment around coercive control and a separate one on migrant women. Unfortunately, people somehow don't focus so much on migrant women. There is some focus on refugee women, but not so much on migrant women. And my work is mostly around migrant women. So if you wish to learn, you can read my book. As you mentioned that before, George, and I can, and there are some references that I can send you particularly that is based on our research. But if you go on our website, www.achrh.org, all our research papers are listed on that we have conducted with the community, and that will give you a lot of ideas, research, and tools. So my organization, the NGO, which is the Australasian Centre for Human Rights and Health, we have been very busy working in the community to create awareness in order to stop domestic violence. And so you will also find work around that on our website, is the work we do with the community in order to stop this from happening.
Thank you, Professor. I will move to the next question that's addressed to Rebecca, and it reads, thanks, Rebecca. It struck me that even though Sami is not my client, it is quite easy to feel slightly maternal towards her. Has this been your experience? And if so, how do you manage this and generally maintain boundaries with this family given the ongoing risk?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Absolutely. Yes, I experienced that. It's a challenge, and I think my supervision has been really helpful in relation to that. And even my colleagues, having conversations with colleagues about crying on their shoulders at certain times. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to maintain boundaries and to accept that there's only so much I can do within my role, and I can't overstep that. And I have a lot of thought processes that go on about overstepping that, but I don't overstep it, obviously. But yes, I feel very maternal towards her. There's a lot of countertransference, and yes, I wish I could constantly do more. I see her as, as I said before, sometimes it's blurry around my own daughter and her as a young person needing to be parented. So yes, it's difficult to manage, and it's an ongoing thing that I have to look at in supervision.
Thank you, Rebecca. I wonder, Professor, whether you could throw any insights on this question. And particularly, I think the question also mentions risk. And Rebecca in her presentation also mentioned being more aware of risk. And this is something that, certainly in our work, in this area, we're aware that there's risk to the clients, but there's also a level of risk to our, practitioners as well.
Yes. Absolutely. So that's why I mentioned Merrim's risk assessment that was actually produced in Victoria. And although it's not, the risk factors are not weighted, it's not like a mathematical formula, but you do have all the risks there listed on a template that you have to tick as you go along. So at least you know that your client in front of you is safe. That's the most important thing, is safety to the client, not only from the outsiders, like your case, Rebecca, but also from suicidal within. So she had risk from both factors, from outside and from within. And you have to continuously keep a monitor on that. And you did that, Rebecca. You did that really well in that. So you were able to bring in services that looked after the domestic violence part of it. And you were able to refer her to the child and youth mental health services, who would then, because the GPs do not like to prescribe medication for adolescent people. So it's only those services, child mental adolescent services, that do that. And if they are also working with you, they're also looking at keeping a watch on the suicidal ideation. And so those things are important, but so is in cross the counter transference. That is something that I also have an issue with, because I'm an Indian woman. I came here as a migrant bride 50 years ago. And, I actually feel the trauma of the women that I am helping. And you have to continuously step back, and it does take a toll on you. So you do have to be careful. But the way I have decided to manage it is, everything I learn from my patients, I turn that into an advocacy tool. Everything. So I will talk to politicians about it. I will talk to the policymakers about it. I talk to the media about it. And so it helps me to know that I am not just drowning in a pool of loss of control. I have some control. I use that knowledge. And also, by doing research, because we do a lot of research in the community as action research, we use all that knowledge and write the papers, create the tools for that. So that's how I have been able to manage to feel like I'm not drowning in it. I am using it, and it's a constructive process.
Thank you, Professor. Rebecca, any other thoughts on that?
I think that's a very valuable point. So yeah, we can't drown in it, because if we're drowning in it, and there are moments where I'm drowning in it, and I have to kind of reset and step outside of it and use it as fuel to propel me forward, and to propel my passion, and to just keep doing the work that I'm doing, and kind of anchor myself in the importance of that and how meaningful it is for me. So I'm not drowning in it. And so I can feel safe in my own life, so I can function and be well. It's very important, you're right, to kind of use those experiences and that knowledge as a fuel to kind of advocate and to move this forward, or make it happen less.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next questions, which takes us to a slightly different topic. And it reads, what strategies can you use when working with former refugee community leaders who use coercive control themselves? And of course, that's an area that, is a difficult area to touch. But of course, we see, we see it in the media, we see it elsewhere, but we certainly see it, in communities as well. Any thoughts on this?
Very difficult. It's so difficult that if you have community leaders actually doing coercive control themselves, then how can you gently, you can't change anything. You can't change anyone 180 degrees, not possible. But you can do something to gently bend the process and to create, like I was just thinking about the other day, how could I write a book that would uh, like show what an extended family could be, where the multiple perpetrators, where we get multiple perpetrators in extended families. How can we create a family, extended family, that is still extended, culturally relevant, culturally sensitive, but we reduce the multiple perpetration that's going on? So basically you cannot remove the culture, and you cannot remove the coercive control, uh, I should say coercive controlling perpetrators completely within the community. You have to go within the community, within that culture, to do something with it. You have to be an insider, outsider is what I'm saying. You can't just be an outsider. What I mean is that you cannot tell people what to do. You have to be a part of that community to be able to do something with it. That's the issue that I am having most difficulty with, is dealing with community leaders who can be coercive and controlling.
Mhm. I also just wanted to add, I don't necessarily have a lot of access to community leaders, but we do have a CD worker that we're working with who is constantly thinking about these themes and uses a lot of kind of more creative ways to engage community leaders in events where conversations are kind of being had around these themes. So it's definitely not direct, but it's a way to start the conversation. And she has existing relationships with a bunch of these community leaders. So it's a very slow-paced process, but something that is going to take, it's very hard, it's going to take a lot of work. So she is using different creative kind of ways of engaging them, as opposed to being more direct, which is kind of what we do in therapy.
Yeah, so that's what I thought when I started work in this area, was if I was an outsider, I might be able to have a bit of a more of an impact. But most impact comes from working with a whole lot of NGOs at once, bring in a lot of people. So when we do our projects, we'll work with 3-4 NGOs at once. And so you are creating peer pressure to change, or to be part of the change.
Yeah.
No, thank you, absolutely. And certainly, I think some of the answers lie in the area of community education, or making sure that community leaders are exposed to these, but also, other people within the community are exposed to this way of thinking, to the rights, and also call those things out, because after all, as you pointed out, it is now considered, domestic violence. There are legal tools available, even though, as you pointed out, they're still in the infancy in terms of implementation and so on. A complex issue. Yeah.
And no, what I meant to say is that it's essential that we work with them. We work with community and the leaders. Otherwise, no change will occur. We cannot imagine the community members will go and read a book to change. We have to take the knowledge to them. So this is essential work.
Yeah. And ultimately, the law applies to everyone in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working with the former Premier. Sorry, something has happened here. I was working with the former Premier Ted Baillieu, and the most amazing line that he said all the time was, "It is a crime, okay? It's a crime. There's nothing, you don't need to do anything more than that to recognize it's a crime, and the law will apply." So so people have to follow the law.
Absolutely. Thank you. And let's go on to next question, which takes us in yet again another direction. How can we identify coercive control in the absence of physical signs when the victim copes by hoping things will improve?
Yeah. It is the issue, absolutely. As in Rebecca's case, her patient, her client, that her mother keeps on hoping that the men will come back, and she wants to have the intervention orders, AVOs revoked. And there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, it is that a lot of the women feel extremely vulnerable without their male partner, and they're not used to making the decisions that their partners make. They are not exposed to the world in the way their partners are. The community they live in wants them to have a husband, a partner in their life, like the stigma of being a single mother and the societal exclusion of being a single parent, the financial problems that arises from being a single parent. So there are numerous reasons why women want to revoke the protection orders. And the downside is that when the male partner comes home, they are even more angry than before because they have lost respect in the community, because they were sent to jail. It's a very dangerous situation when the person comes back from jail. And I have known women whose separated husbands, after coming out from jail, have perpetrated the most severe abuses because their wife had complained to police. And so basically the difficulty there is how much danger she's in. That's what you have to take a decision on. But it does not help the woman really in either situation, whether the husband is in prison or whether the husband is out. That's the trouble. And you have to work with what factors you have in front of you to decide which way you will support the victim in front of you.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I think for me, when working with people, there are so many factors contributing to their decision to stay, as Professor O'Connor has just said, and so it has to be very patient, and we have to plant seeds. It's just conversations about, oh, that sounds a bit controlling, or how is it like for you at home? So very general, just gathering information. And I think the more I develop trust with people, the more we develop trust, the more they tend to open up, and they become kind of more ambivalent about their decisions, as opposed to just being hopeful that the person will change or that they'll return. So I think it is a matter of being very patient, being very respectful, and understanding there are cultural differences. So my experience of being a woman in this country is very different to many of the clients that I work with. I cannot push my beliefs about my rights onto these women. So I have to be very, very patient with them. I have to understand where they're coming from, and the pressure that they have in the community. The reputation is huge. So it's just about that trust, developing trust over time to the point where I have had women eventually walk away when they have felt strong enough and they've had those kind of external things in place that they've been able to do that. And then some are staying, and we just manage, how do we keep you safe while you're staying? And if you have children, how do we keep them safe? So yeah, it's a very slow, patient, respectful process.
Yeah, so I think I can definitely agree with Rebecca in that women, you have to stay in therapy with them over a long period of time, it can become quite exasperating sometimes, because you hearing the same story over and over and over and over again, and the woman knows exactly where the abuse is happening, why it is happening, but um, she doesn't still feel safe enough and strong enough to leave. And it will take years for that process sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. But you
Yes.
stay with the woman. That's the end lesson.
Yes.
Thank you both. And of course, it highlights the issue that you both agree, the scarcity of resources in this area,
Yeah.
particularly when we have to deal, with, both cultural and language barriers in that process. But I'd like to take it to the next most uploaded question, which relates to young people, and it reads, would love to hear more your thoughts related to coercive control between young people in a relationship. Seems to be very prevalent at the moment.
Yes, it's prevalent. And I hear about it, particularly even with this client. It's very normalized. So jealousy is very much seen as a sign of affection. It means he cares a lot about me. It's quite new for young people to understand that can actually be very controlling. So I do think it's quite common, and it is, I think, an issue that schools need to look at: healthy relationships, consent, respect, very early on, because I think there's a vulnerability in particularly people that have already experienced a lot of trauma in their life and just really wanting to be loved or be with. And sometimes it doesn't matter who that is, it's just sometimes the attention or affection. So yeah, I think it is a huge challenge, and something that I continue to talk with my client around. How are you feeling in that relationship? If she's uncomfortable about something, or just the knowledge around that sounds really controlling, and that sounds like similar to what happens in your family. So really pointing those themes out on a regular basis.
Yeah. And another form of coercive control is the bullying that happens at school. Just the most epidemic proportions of bullying that's going on. And the another form of coercive control is non-fatal strangulation as part of sex. That's a huge problem amongst university students. And that is something that people need to be aware of when you're working with young people, because it is very risky, very risky.
Of course, something that, sadly we see quite a bit of in our work is coercive control in the context of domestic violence, often by siblings. Any comments on this?
Sorry, say that again. I missed the last.
Coercive control by siblings.
Oh, yes. So the older siblings have a lot of power over the younger siblings, and sexual coercion is going on a lot from older siblings to the younger siblings. And this actually came out in the research that has been conducted by the University of Queensland around childhood adverse events. And they found that more than half the sexual abuse occurred by their siblings. And that is quite a frightening fact, really. And as Rebecca says, that this has to be something that schools have to teach. The schools are tired, like the police force themselves, of taking on more and more responsibilities that are the responsibilities of parents or their counselors or their therapists. And they are saying it's not our core responsibility, but schools are the best place to really educate. They are where students go to learn. So we really need to start really focusing on these issues at school about sibling abuse, just like bullying that's being done.
I also see quite quite a lot of this in terms of our clients when from particular cultures where the eldest male does have a lot of say over younger siblings, particularly females, around what they can wear. They're joking with their friends about who he's going to marry her off to, like really young as well. So I do see themes of that, a lot of kind of power dynamics about being the eldest male in these families, and cultural dynamics that are at play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about fortunately, we don't have too much of it in Australia, but the honor killings that happen, it happens quite a lot in the UK, and usually by the older sibling.
Yes.
Certainly, a very worrying aspect to that issue. We only got 5 minutes left, but there's a question that's come up looking at the other side of the coin. It's also, it also happens to be the most upvoted at the moment. And it reads, are there common patterns in life histories, personality, etc., of coercive control perpetrators? Do we know who becomes a coercive controller and why? And if I could add to this question, what can we do in terms of prevention?
Yeah, I looked at that when I was doing my preparing my presentation for this webinar, but I thought that is such a huge topic that it will make the presentation totally 2 hours, So it's something that we need to look at, and it deserves a special webinar on its own as to what are the perpetrator characteristics and what do we know? What do we need to know? What's going on currently? Like all the men's behavior change programs are based on the Duluth power of control, a power and control wheel. But how many people actually understand coercive control and how is it being done? So it might be very useful next webinar to have one for perpetrators, and as a co-presenter, 2 or 3 presenters, one from Men's Behavior Change Program expert. They will be able to add an enormous amount of knowledge because I talk to them all the time. They have a lot of information and knowledge that is almost wasted, really, because it's not getting published anywhere.
Thank you, Professor. I'm sure Nuria is taking notes of this and will follow you up in terms of suggestions for presenters. Rebecca, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's such a huge question. And I've just seen so many different types of men that can be using coercive control. So it doesn't fit kind of one type of person. I think so many factors play into it, as Professor O'Connor said. I do think it's really important to be working with boys, to be working with their self-esteem, to be working on their emotional intelligence, to be working on respect. It is such a space that is so important. And yeah, I struggle with that as well, as I know it's so necessary. But I think that is what we need to do. We need to be working with girls, not boys, not just girls in terms of keeping them safe, but boys around how do we be respectful. And that has to happen from a very young age through the school curriculum with parents, et cetera, et cetera. It's just too big.
Yeah, so I think that there are programs that are running in schools at the moment. There's one in particularly in Victoria, I think it's called the Man Cave or some name like that. It would be great to have them, and I would love to learn from them as well as to what they're doing, and the Men's Behavior Change Program, and one person with an overall. That will be an amazing webinar.
Excellent. We'll keep that in mind. We do run some programs along that of that nature, and so I'm pretty sure that we'll find the space to maybe visit that topic next year. Thank you both so much. You've been absolutely wonderful. Your presentations, your insight, and your experience and knowledge on this area. And it's been such a insightful, but also, a very practical presentation. I think we got lots of tips apart from, very insightful insights into this very complex topic. Thank you both. I'd like to
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.